Hello, Angel. How are you?
Good. How
hmm I'm excited about today's conversation. What are we talking about?
We're going to continue our series on plants and trees wisdom, and today we are going to talk about sage. Beautiful, beautiful sage.
Hot topic, right? I remember years and years ago when I walked into an Urban Outfitter, which was maybe still cool at the time, I'm not sure. And there was sage and crystal. I was like, what is happening? What is happening to the world? So, as we talk about sage today, I want to also bring in the lessons of of seasonality to it. And the traditions I come from, it's not just the plant, but it's the life cycle of the plant. And that is what the wisdom of the plant has. So it's not just used to make something, a tincture, or to smudge, or as medicine, as something, that works for you, right? You don't go to out to the forest and you look at everyone's CV to see what they can do, and you hire them to do the job. What it is understanding that to sit with sage, to grow sage, to harvest wild sage with permission, right? There are practices and protocols, right? Asking is a huge part of that. And part of the process of being one who tends to medicine, keeps medicine, and makes medicine is to knowing that permission, knowing that ask, and knowing that the wisdom or that medicine, what heals us is the process that that plant and the wisdom that it has as one who has a life cycle, right? We live in days where we're spraying our plants, our harvests, and it's affecting everything around. So keep that in mind too, that in this time when we are collecting medicines, we have to take extra steps. We have to recognize that the energia or the relationship that they had once has been disconnected as we continue to spray and plant and spray and plant. And so, as we approach sage today, let's just take a moment, right? Because it's being harvested beyond its capacity to recognize that our curiosity sometimes need not be satiated by the physical product itself. So just take a moment to reflect, and I'm not trying to wag a finger right now, on your relationship and on that knowledge of sage that you have. If your knowledge of sage is just because you bought it, because someone told you to, and you light it and you use the whole stick, that's fine. That's where you're at. But today we want to talk about plants and the wisdom of individual leaves. So let's dive into sage because in old traditions, right, we didn't take a whole plant, right, and just burn it immediately. We understood that each leaf on that plant, whatever it might be, and sage is such an incredible teacher of this, of how it grows, has wisdom, and it's part of interdependence within the whole. So, my friend, want to go a little bit deeper with sage?
I used sage for, decades. But my relationship to sage shifted 7 or 8 years ago. I was in the Western United States, Central Western, and I was going to visit some elders in South Dakota. And I was stopping at one of the sacred mountain there, hills. And I walked out, and there's just really big prairies with some buffaloes around, and then I saw this plant there that looked very different than the sage I knew, the garden sage. And this was the wild sage, the sage that grows in the prairies over there. Um, she is more thin in her leaves. She is a bit longer. There's something more elegant. The garden sedge is a little more stuffy and closer to the ground and with this big leaf. And then I smell that plant. I kind of approach it, start smelling it. I was like, oh my God, this is sage. That's the original wild sage. And then there was this moment where she basically, I heard, look where I grow, look at the landscape. And it was this clear, open plains. It was a bright, sunny sky that day. It's quite silent. You know, there's a little bit of wind, but there's not that many trees over there. And I understood why sage, when you walk in a proper way with it, was the spirit of sage is that spirit that provide that clarity, that opening of energy, that release, because that's what I experienced in that landscape when I was looking at it. Indeed, we grow well where the land is in alignment with us. And so, you know, when we speak of sage and we spoke about other plants, it's really important to look at where this plant grows and how she grows or he grows, however you want to name that plant. A plant that grows in the forest under the canopy of trees and in the shadows have very different energies than a plant that grow alongside the road, than the plants that grow into a plain, that a plant that grows on rocks at the entrance of cave in Peru. There's this very unique flowers that just grow at the entrance of caves on rocks. It's beautiful orange flower. And so it's very much as you meeting someone, right? When you meet someone, they are coming with their ancestors. They are coming with their original land and traditions and rituals and ceremonies, and sage is the same. Sage has a history on this planet and has migrated around and then found places where she was really happy and expanded. And then people started to see, oh, there's this very interesting plant there. So yes, we often buy sage on the internet or in stores, basically a dry stick of compressed leaves together. But once you see the sage in its natural environment, once you respect the way you collect that sage, once you also use it in ways that are conscious, meaning, yes, just one leaf and you just burn one leaf, and it's usually enough to sage yourself, just one leaf. You don't need the whole stick. The spirit of that plant is with you, is happy, is seen. You are in a relationship with sage. And so instead of becoming, like you said, I love the image going to a plant and reading its resume or its CV for what you want to do about it. No, let the plant teach you, open to you with those wonderful teachings. And, you know, that brought me to, you know, I was gifted some seeds there and brought them back on my land and growing her here. And that's the sage I've been using now for so many years because she grows really well here too. The smell, the way it looks is so different than the sage you might buy or have smelled before. And like you said, most of the sage we buy is grown into very extensive and intensive farms using chemicals and products. And we push the plant for the maximum output of quantity. It's about quantity, right? It's not about is the plant happy. It's not about is the plant in relation with that plant or in relation with other plants, by the way, that needs to grow with her for her to be really happy. It's very much like a cage chicken that is, you know, not very happy and stressed and losing its feather. And so the quality of the relationship with any beings is how this relationship is happy to be in a relationship with you, is connected to you, is joyful. And the spirits that is not very happy, usually you don't really want to work with that spirit or with that plant. That's still to this day, I remember that first sage that I saw. You know, it's funny remembering that moment. I think it's 7 or 8 years ago. And now when I see the little sage stick, and sometimes that's all we have and that's all what's available, but it's a complete different being. It's a complete different being.
I love that imagery. Right? We went from Urban Outfitters to a field. But, I think it's also, as we talk about this, right? Because we're talking about relation, is that the plants that exist out there are not just for humans, right? Other beings, including grass beings, depend on sage, right? It creates part of an ecosystem. And that ecosystem is about relationship, whether it's bison grazing, whether it's, small birds, the way that it grows, the way that it propagates, the way that it's early, teaches us about how sage is really about community. And what it does, it clears away the misconception that we are separate. And so I know a lot of people use it to clear medicinally spirits and things like that. There's a lot of things roaming around in the world. And what it presents to us is that blueprint of connection, that blueprint of being in vastness, right? Vastness. And a lot of people get lost in vastness. A lot of things inhabit vastness. And so sage in its relationship to the ecosystem that it creates allows us to be with our insecurities, our fear of something greater. It clears the way to be in community with the unknown. It clears on a micro status. It clears away things that are going to take us out of balance, right? And out of balance means out of community. So as we allow ourselves to consider this and not just have a video about this is how you burn sage, this is the correct way, or this is what sage does medicinally, right? There's a lot of those, right? Angel and I are those
video
people.
here about that.
Yeah, that's not the video.
Sorry, guys.
They're like, off. No. One thing to consider is, what is your relationship with vastness? What is your relationship with using and consuming? Next time when you sit with sage, when you ask to work with sage, are you taking the time to just really have small prayers, knowing that small prayers or big prayers can be held in just one leaf, right? Last image that I'll share, it keeps coming to me, right? Is this idea of the bison and the relationship, right? Of how bison created the soil that we have and in the United States. And here is this being, right? Very sacred being who represents for us a wisdom of knowledge of ancestors, because they walk with their weight. Every part of it is part of a whole, of a cosmology itself, right? And the bison have close relationship to those fields, have close relationship to vastness, have close relationship of being one part of the cycle. I think Sage today is here to teach us to become and return back to being one part of that cycle, one leaf on that sage. And let that be enough. Let that be enough, because that means you get to interact with the vastness of what you do not know, which is the potential of clarity. Thank you.